Hi everyone, I'm Damien Cross at DC_F1 on Twitter, and welcome to ZoomZoomers. We've got some people in the waiting room already, so I'm going to let those in. Just take me a few seconds to get that ready. So sorry if there's a bit of feedback, and as always, when I let them in, apologies if there's any bad language or anything like that. I'm sure they mean to behave, but sometimes it's hard for them to. So it's not a massive crowd to start off with, but some people will be joining as we go along. And we can see Craig, see Alan, see Joe. They're just switching on their cameras. Sorry, guys, I've done an update. Well, Zoom has done an update, and so it doesn't automatically switch your cameras on because I have to go and press a button for it to do that. So that'll happen at some point. But for now, let's start off with I've got Joe.
Good evening. Joe Tanner at Stuff About Cars, and I work for Stellantis.
Fantastic. And Alan.
Hi, I'm Alan Bradley. I am a presenter of the Motoring Podcast, and my Twitter handle is at AJP Bradley. That's BRADLEY. I think I've remembered how to do that. I'm sure I've forgotten something.
Spot on. I think that sounds quite familiar, so it must be right. We have Craig.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I'm Craig Willard. I'm at Craig_Willard, and I quit my job.
You did. You've been teasing us about that, so perhaps get onto that in a little while. So what was your Twitter handle, Craig?
At Craig_Willard, I think. Pretty sure it still is.
That sounds about right. Richard.
Hello, I'm Richard Gooding. I'm freelance motor writer and graphic designer, and my Twitter handle is at richgooding.com.
Brilliant. And LA.
Hello. It's been a long time.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm LA Wilshire, and my Twitter is I don't even remember.
You haven't written it on your Zoom. You normally have it at the bottom of your Zoom, but it's not there. Is it 1LA or something like that?
This is so simple, isn't it? It's @1_LA.
Yes, basically, just look for LA Wilshire or just LA, and it'll probably pop up somewhere. Brilliant. It was good to see you all. 6th of June. It's been a while since the last one, first Monday of the month, of course. But yeah, a lot seems to have happened in that time. And Craig, you mentioned there straight away, you're switching jobs. So please tell us you're still going to be involved with motorsport or cars in some sort of way.
Yeah, I'm still going to be within the motorsport industry. I'm not going to reveal exactly where I'm going and what I'm doing. I've told some people already. But yeah, it's a very exciting career change. Let's just put it that way. That will be taking place. It'll be another career change for me my whole life just seems to be career changes. So, but that's how it is sometimes. But yeah, a little bit sad to leave the archive, and the leaving drinks were plentiful. That's for sure. But yeah, new adventures ahead.
New adventures ahead, and obviously don't reveal anything, but I'm hoping that they're going to treat you well and make sure that you can, pay the bills and stuff like that. You're not actually jumping ship and having to take a hit or anything. So hopefully they're going to be looking after you as well. So it's good to know that you're still sticking in the industry, and let us know as soon as you can tell us, so we can then go and follow whichever accounts we need to follow, whichever company you're working for. It'll be great. And you got a beer there as well. Cheers.
Of course.
Joe, how are things going your end?
Well, chip crisis is still here.
Yeah.
It's still chaos. It's still fun and games. The industry is still struggling. Although I think things are changing a little bit. There's been a few rumours. Other manufacturers have said that they're starting to see a bit more stability on that front, which is good. But actually, I think the other side of the equation is now changing. I think demand is starting to drop off.
Right.
The cost of living crisis, the tax changes, the cost of fuel, energy, etc., I think is going to start having an impact. And I was reading one of the used car guides, and they were saying we've got this old situation with low demand and low supply in the used car market. So it'd be interesting to see what happens to prices of used cars, because that's one thing that a lot of people do see. Mm-hmm. And actually, I'm switching roles at work as well, and I'm going to be looking after residual values for Vauxhall Motors.
Okay.
So I think at this point they can only go down.
Right, I got you.
I think they've probably got as high as they're going to get. So under my watch, they're probably going to drop. So all my charts will have red on them, whereas my predecessor's charts all had green on them. So
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So when you say look after residual values, is it simply tracking them, or do you have any kind of way of influencing?
lots of influencing. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Lots of relationship with the guys who write the books,
Okay.
and picking out where there might be inconsistencies in the data and presenting new products to them and that sort of thing. So yeah, plenty of influence.
Do you think the chip shortage and people being unable to get the car they want straight away,
Mhm.
and then looking at the used car market and that pushing the prices up, as you just alluded to with the green arrows, is that going to change people's buying habits in the long term? Do you think have people kind of their hands been forced by this? Do you think it might be people going, I don't need a new car, I'm quite happy sticking with what I've got?
Well, one thing that's happened is that prices have gone up a lot. So a lot of manufacturers have put prices up, and they are probably going to stay up. They won't come down again. I think a lot of raw material prices and the various inputs have gone up and will probably stay up. And cars have got very, very expensive. I don't know if anyone looks at new car prices, but it's quite scary. Which is where where my job becomes important, because it's all about the monthly payment difference between the new car price and the residual. So, but I think cars are going to remain expensive. That the manufacturers aren't going to drop prices. So, yeah, I think that could have a long-term impact on the size of the car market.
Gotcha.
Overall, and therefore, as you say, yeah, it's just changing buying habits. People keep their cars longer, and so on. It'd be interesting to observe how that works, because it doesn't mean that residuals will have to stay longer in that environment, because people are hanging on to their cars or happy to buy older cars.
I've been looking at the prices of just speaking of everyone changing jobs, I've been looking at prices of vehicles, obviously in the US recently, and well, for starters, you can't really get that many new vehicles, and if you do, then of course they put the price up. The dealers add a wodge on for sort of market adjustment and other such euphemistic euphemisms for greed, basically. But the used cars, you think, it's the US, there'll be so many, there'll be loads to choose from, it'll be really, and you'll be able to, spend $5,000-$6,000, get something decent to run around in until I've made up my mind to decide what to do. And no, not the case.
Wow.
I mean, used cars have always been expensive in the States versus the UK. I think the UK is the way it's plate driven. So what plate the car is on is so important to us vain Brits, and therefore you end up with quite heavy depreciation. And used cars are actually quite cheap compared to most places in the world, but in particular the US. The US has always been the gap between new and used has always been much smaller than the UK. But even in the current situation, you're seeing some quite crazy prices, I guess.
Yeah, and then I went and it's been a couple of times where you look at stuff and you go, how much? And then you compare it to the UK one. But then there was at least one example at the weekend there where I was like, how much? And then I went off to Auto Trader in the UK, went and looked for the closest spec of the same vehicle that I could, and it was like, oh, that's about parity, actually, isn't it? Which sort of surprised me just at used car prices here in the UK.
Yeah, and you obviously quite regularly talk about and track new car sales and that kind of thing. So
new car registrations, I think,
course,
find it
yes.
is. And tomorrow is because of course they've just come out. So tomorrow night's recording will be the last month's. And
have you seen the general? I don't want you to reveal what's coming out in the podcast tomorrow, but
I haven't read it yet, so I can't do that.
Right. Oh, okay, fair enough. But have you seen a general a trend where it's kind of starting to kind of get a bit more back to normal on new car registrations, or is it still?
No.
May was terrible.
Yeah,
well, not terrible, but it was a weak month.
But April was pretty grim too. I mean, the only comment I've seen so far was Andrew saying there's an awful lot of red in the spreadsheet this month.
Okay.
Which is never a good sign. I mean, he loves the fact that there's lots of red because he's a bloody doom merchant. But yeah, that's the only comment I've seen about it so far.
Just make sure you talk about the best-selling car in the month and the best-selling car year to date.
Oh right. So
okay.
Oh right. Yes.
That'd be the Vauxhall Corsa.
The Vauxhall Corsa. Yes. Exactly.
Richard, let's switch to you about new cars as well, because you're often one of the first to have a go in the tasty new metal that they're putting out there. But have you seen a drop off as well in available, and the company's launching new products?
Not quite so much that kind of thing. I have been invited to a few things, but they've been overseas, and I'm not really comfortable with, well, A, going overseas at the moment, B, the airport situation isn't. But no, I think stuff's still being launched. It was interesting what Joe was saying about the prices. Actually, I'm running a Honda E for 3 months, and the spec of this car, which is top of the range, is 37,000, I think. And when it came out, I looked at an old road test last week. It was about 26 or 28. So in 2 years, that's quite a big jump. And I'm not saying if that's bad or good or whatever, but it's quite a sizable jump, especially for a car that small.
Yeah.
Every time we mention new car prices, so I mean, a recent example is the new Igo Cross. So of course, tiny A segment car, and you mentioned the price, and so that's models start from about £18,000. Everybody's like, £18,000. Understandably, it's a lot of money. It really is a lot. I mean, there's a lot of kit in it, but little cars are expensive, and the price, of course, has shot up far more quickly than I think larger cars.
Even though I'm around them, well, we were all around them a fair amount of the time, I was still quite surprised, I think, how pricey they are. Cars in general now.
Yeah. I'd say roughly 20% price increase in the last 2 years.
Okay.
I should point out, by the way, that
we're talking about.
That I got my numbers wrong. The Igo Cross starts at 14,795 on the road and rises to 20,740 on the road.
And people can find out more about that car using the Motor Podcast YouTube, I believe, Alan.
A little bit on the YouTube also, but mostly on the from your favorite podcast player. It was just because I happened to know that the press pack was sitting beside me. So.
Before we, I'm only going to be here for a little bit longer, and before I hand the reins over to LA, but I do want to kind of chat a little bit about motorsport before I disappear, because that's kind of where I come from. LA, I'll come to you in a little while to talk about Formula 2 and e-scooter riding, which I know you've been involved in, and in the past I've been a little bit involved as well. But Craig, let's go straight to the current situation in Formula 1, the season as it's going at the moment. How would you sum it up, and what actually happened to Ferrari in Monaco?
I think the best way to describe what happened to Ferrari in Monaco is that Ferrari decided to go peak Ferrari and totally Ferrari up their strategy, meaning that they've completely Ferrari'd up their result, meaning that Red Bull came away with a 1-3. And yeah, the drivers were not best pleased with how that weekend turned out. But yeah, it certainly does seem to be very much Red Bull versus Ferrari at the moment. It's just ebbing and flowing quite intensely between the two of them at the moment. You got Max and Charles up at the top, as you would expect, but Perez is having a very, very strong season, especially off the back of that win at Monaco. And you could argue that he perhaps should have had a better chance at winning at Barcelona, if not for some rather interesting usage of team orders by Red Bull. And if he did, he would only be 3 points behind Max in the championship.
Okay.
So yeah, it's certainly looking like that at the moment, but you can't really count out Mercedes either, because okay, Monaco was a weak weekend, but if they are able to find the sweet spot with that car on a more regular basis, and the amount of points that Red Bull and Ferrari have both already dropped mean that you can't really count those out. You can't count them out either. And when you go back to like Bahrain and Saudi, you would have thought that would have been impossible. But yeah, there's a lot of season still to go, and it's very difficult to really sort of read exactly, which 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 drivers could still be, really in the mix for this championship at this point.
Yeah, and I suppose this is, new regulations. They're all getting on top of them, trying to figure things out. We saw a lot of problems with porpoising. McLaren had problems with brakes, from what I understand, and they're kind of figuring those things out. And Mercedes seem to be a little bit more on top of the porpoising. Monaco's not the best track to really show that, but McLaren, like I say, they kind of seem to be on the up to some extent. Now they've got on top of the brakes, but there was a lot of talk around Danny Ricciardo at Monaco, and he did bin it in practice. And how do you feel that relationship's going?
I don't think it's going anywhere nearly quite as well as they would have hoped. I don't think that Ricciardo's style of driving particularly suits this generation of cars.
Okay.
Because the cars only tend to want to go one way under braking, whereas Ricciardo was so good with being able to do some pretty gnarly things under braking, but these cars just are not designed to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And in general, it just seems that he's sort of just stuck in this sort of repeated sequence of not being able to understand where things are going wrong, and then it just sort of all like compounds itself, and then you have a weekend like Monaco where nothing just goes well, and yeah, it's not looking good. Ricciardo, when he's like at the top of his game, he's one of the best out there, but problem is that we've only seen the best of Ricciardo 2, 3, 4 times over the past 18 months.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, he's won at Monaco. He knows how to do it. If he gets the right kind of, but hey. Moving on from Formula One then, before I mentioned that Simon Browse is obviously watching along and has asked whether Alan can blur out the background just so he matches. That's all. So I think he's just keen to get involved somehow.
I'd just been thinking about that a second ago and then decided that I wasn't going to.
No, why should you? And now that Simon's asked you to, you really mustn't.
That just absolutely confirmed my decision.
It's a shame Simon's not here because I'd like to talk to him about the Jubilee and how he's involved. But yeah, sorry, LA.
I'm not blurred. These are my windows. I've just not cleaned them for 6 months.
You just got a smudgy lens, haven't you? That's what it's all about. But LA, let's talk about the lower Formula. And Formula 2 is kind of where we know you from, LA. So how is it looking this season?
Yeah, it's kind of a little bit surprising this season, really. We've sort of got a surprise person leading the championship, which is Felipe Drugovich. He came along with great promise and kind of hasn't really lived up to what we expected the last 2-3 seasons. But this season, he's just coming into his own. He is being helped by the fact that the MP car is looking very, very handy. His teammate Clement Novalak is also doing quite well, and the car is looking reasonably good. And compare that to the Prema, which is normally the most, the reliable car, the reliable team. They're having some reliability issues this season, as well as ART. 1 minute they're there, and Theo Pourchaire is winning races himself, and then the next minute there's an issue. So I think that MP is the most reliable team right now, which is enabling Felipe to just sort of keep his nose ahead. But we did have quite sort of an interesting Monaco race weekend regarding the two championship leaders are Felipe Drugovich and Theo Pourchaire, by the way. And we did have quite an interesting Monaco because sort of not really much happened in the sprint race itself. It was a little bit difficult to get a story out of that, but we had Jake Hughes, which is in the VAR car, the Van Amersfoort team, and Felipe Drugovich and his MP, and they both seem to just sort of disappear. They both get disappearing, and we know that Jake had an issue off the start, and he ended up quite way behind the pack, but he didn't seem to catch that pack even behind a safety car. And it wasn't really explained very much at the time of why he wasn't catching up and where he was. And Felipe Drugovich kept going in and out the pits. It's like, how many times can you go in and out the pits, changing your tires, changing them back, and then the next minute he just disappeared off the face of the earth. And even down the timings down the side of the TV, he'd gone. And then the next minute he reappeared and he's back on the track again. And it was more sort of fascinating from that point of view, in kind of just watching the side, wondering where people were going and what they were doing. But then the day after in the feature race, Felipe was on pole and he led from the start, and a very, very determined Teo Boucher he put an incredible performance in. But I think with it being Monaco, he couldn't quite get past, even though he tried his best, even in a pit stop. They both went into the pits together, both had a long pit stop, longer than normal, so both came out in the same order. Did have to give way, did have to stop at the end with quite a few others at the end of the pit lane, because marshals were trying to clear the other Van Amersfoort car out of the way, and they were clearing it backwards, pushing it backwards down the pit lane the wrong way, and that was when everyone had sort of darted in, and I don't think race control was quite quick enough to close that pit lane, so they'd all darted in, and then next minute they're all just sitting there at the end of the pit lane waiting for this car to be cleared. So that was sort of a bit of an interesting and fascinating from a watcher's point of view. So yeah, I mean, we had Dennis Hauger win his first race in that sprint race, and he's come into the championship as Formula 3 champion, so he's coming with some great promise, and he's the other driver in the Prema team. And then we also had Felipe win that feature race. So we go to Baku next, along with Formula 1, supporting Formula 1, and we're all pretty much looking forward to that, because it's still a fantastic street circuit, but there are some handy couple of DRS zones. There are some lovely twisty turny sections throughout the old city, the castle area. And talking about Ferrari, and let's hope that Charles doesn't come into that barrier like
again,
he has again. Find it head first. Even in the Formula 1, they it's a tricky circuit, and there was a few tyre blowouts last year out for one. There was
very
a lot
unpredictable.
It was, and there was a lot of coming togethers in the F2. There's a lot of penalties. There was a lot of 3 cars trying to get past each other, a broken wrist, a bit of an accident, a determined British Dan Ticktum storming his way, 4 overtakes and overtaking 2 cars at once. We don't have Dan this season, unfortunately, but we have a very young, promising Japanese driver called Ayumu Iwasa, and I'm going to keep my eye on him, because I kind of think he might pull a few Dan Ticktum moves in that race. Quite excited to see what he does. So yeah, I mean, that's Formula 2 in a nutshell for, I guess, season so far.
Excellent. So Uwasa, was it?
Uwasa, yeah.
I'll keep an eye out. Talking of tight, twisty street circuit type things, but on a completely different scale, you've been involved in this new ESC Live e-scooter thing.
Yeah, kind of. It's something that's sort of grabbed my interest, and it's a brand new championship, obviously e-scooter, but it's a connections too. There are a few Formula 1 connections. There are a few names that people already know, like Lucas Di Grassi, Alec Wertz, that are in the management, and then in the teams, you have Carlin, who is a feeder series team that I closely work with in Formula 2, and you have Nico Hulkenberg, his team. You also have Anthony Joshua, the boxer, he has a team, and then we have our very own Hannah Gordon, who's the team manager.
Yeah, I've seen her Instagram. Yeah.
Mechanic One, at Twitter, and it was really lovely to see Hannah in person, to hug her, because we've still all not met yet, and hugged and held each other nicely, like we should. We've known each other for so long, and I turned around at the very first race of the season in London with my very, very good friend, just down in my bottom corner, Craig Woolard, and Hannah's there, managing this team. So it's really lovely to see her and catch up with her. But yeah, this e-scooter championship, so it's brand new. There's 30 professional riders, 10 teams. There's going to be 1 championship crowned at the end of the season. We've had the London race, that was the first one. We've just had a race in Sion in Switzerland, and then we have there's Italy, there is France, Spain, and a potential USA as well for the races, and they're sort of part the street circuit, or in London it was the print work, so it's sort of car park that had been adjusted. Some of them might be partly indoor. The London one was, so it's sort of lights and smoke and I don't know, it's just crazy and it's amazing. And what I found, and I'll ask Craig in a minute about how he felt, but it was so chilled out and it was so relaxed. And okay, these riders aren't exactly sort of Lewis Hamilton, superstar status in the world in the grand scheme of things, but they're mingling and they're chatting and they're casual and they're walking around. They're not hidden away, they're speaking with people and happy to take photographs and happy to get to know everybody, and it just feels so lovely and such a family. And I think if I probably walked anywhere near Nico Hulkenberg in a Formula One paddock, he'd probably just turn his back on me and walk away. Although I'm sorry Nico, if you're watching us right now, because I'm sure you watch us every month, and I might have got that wrong, and I apologize if I've insulted you, but in this, it was such a chilled out environment that he just turned around and gave me a nice little cheeky fist bump, and I was like, this probably wouldn't happen somewhere else. This is just a real chilled out, nice vibe here.
Sorry, Ellie. I think that these new formula, that's the case, because in the early days of Formula E, it was exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, hence the Alain Prost tried to steal my coffee story.
Yeah,
because it's exactly the same sort of vibe that you're describing there, Ellie. So I can completely see it, and it's so cool. It's just a real shame whenever race series lose that vibe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So is this? Sorry, Ellie, is it televised? Can we watch along?
It's on. Go on, just Craig. No, it's on the. Oh gosh, you have to give me a channel.
Channel 5.
No. It was BBC.
CBBS.
World on BBC iPlayer. But Eurosport also cover it. I think that they're the commentary team over the television. But there's people to look out for. There are some pretty handy riders out there, and the first winner was Matisse Neyrud from Switzerland, but the second winner, Sarah Cabrini, who's Italian, this is a equal playing field. There are women and men competing in the same races, which is absolutely amazing to see. So we've had one male winner and one female winner already, and it's a really wonderful sport, because it's bringing a lot of these riders are already athletes in some capacity. So we have sort of motorbike in the British Motorbike Championship, and we have ex sort of Olympians that have medals or have competed in Olympics, and I think what's really nice about it as well is that it's so inclusive. You don't feel like I didn't feel like I was like out of my comfort zone or out of my depth being a woman there watching. Everybody's everybody, and it's just crazy. It's a crazy idea concept that's actually brilliant as well. And if you love racing, then it's like, why not? I mean, what did you think, Craig, when you went?
It was so bizarre going to a nightclub to watch motor racing. That was my first impression. I echo pretty much everything that you said there. But it was just such a chilled out vibe, which was really good, because I used that opportunity to get a few drinks down me before I went off to a Eurovision party that evening. But yeah, it was very sort of surreal to sort of have like the fan zone like in the middle of a room, and then you just have the paddock around the fan zone. And things like that. So that was really sort of bizarre. And then to sort of have the racing as well, and like you could either stand outside and watch it, you could stand inside and watch it. It was really sort of weird in a way. I can't really sort of describe it. Just totally unique.
Well, that's good to see that they're trying something different. I guess traditional racers are never going to work with this kind of motorsport, so it kind of brings it in the same way that golf is kind of to reach the masses. You can play golf indoors nowadays and that kind of stuff. And yeah, it seems like it's a good way of getting families involved, and we'll see how it goes. We'll keep an eye on it.
We'll know.
What's also really good is that it's obviously promoting the electric side of competition, if you like, I mean, we all know about, the Formula E and the hybrids of Formula One. And I think that we still have to look for sustainable ways of doing these competitions, and they're I'm not going to say step ahead because we do have Formula E, but it's definitely up there. But what I also find a little bit interesting as well is it's sort of reflecting and representational of what's happening in the world right now. And we know that we've had these sort of fantastical gimmicks that are the hoverboards and sort of these electric, whatever, you sort of trying to avoid people on pavements. But what I found in a recent trip to Barcelona was the city, everybody's riding an e-scooter, and I don't know about any other European cities in the centre of cities. I haven't been to that many, obviously, since for the last 2 or so years, but it seems to be representation of what's happening in the world and how we're going with things like an e-scooter that you can buy and that's actually affordable as well.
Yeah.
So and they're reasonably safe because they're limited to the speed they go. But you yourself was involved, Damien, on some e-scooter promotional thing.
Here in the UK, of course. I'll just quickly cover this before I leave you guys to do some red green questions of LA. Yeah, there's some footage somewhere because I got swept up in this because I was covering the launch of the e-scooter trials in the UK for ZAG. So you'll find their Twitter accounts on mine, the ZAG. And I was in Milton Keynes when Lime joined the party. Spin was already there. Lime came along, and I went there to cover that, test out the e-scooter. And local news was there at the same time, and they said, "Oh, do you mind just going up and down a couple of times?" So yeah, no worries. Before I know it, I'm being interviewed about e-scooters and whether they're a danger to the public and all this sort of thing. There's footage out there somewhere on Look East, I think it was, or something like that. But anyway, yeah, it was a fun day. A bit of a surprise to be on telly, but yeah, I'll leave you in LA's capable hands now, where I'm sure she's got some red green questions to ask and just general chat about the cars. And I'll catch the rest of this broadcast on YouTube tomorrow, hopefully. So don't talk about me thinking I'm not going to hear it. So I'll catch you guys in a bit. I'll click end. Hopefully it'll let me hand the reins over, but I'm sorry if it cuts us off. But until next time, I'll see you in a short while.
Bye, DC.
Okay,
Go on,
we're
Alan,
still here.
sorry,
I was going to say, we'll know that it's successful, that the e-scooter racing is successful, whenever you can buy liveried ones, and you start seeing people using liveried ones. Either that was one thing I was going to say. The other thing I was going to say was, I bet some of the kids in my street could give the actual racers a run for their money. The speed they illegally zip back and forth along the street at, but that's a different thing completely.
Well, maybe there will be, because if you look at the Murphy racing team, who have been in Le Mans and various different racing situations themselves, and they're one of the e-scooter championship teams. They have a scooter side of things already, and maybe they will start selling their own livery Murphy scooters. Who knows?
Cool. The other thing about it is, of course, you can fit the entire grid into a single shipping container.
I don't know, maybe it's possible, maybe. It was a very small paddock, wasn't it, Craig?
Yeah. So I was thinking, you don't really need all that space. But you're used to there's two cars beside each other. No, you really need that much per scooter. Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
What's nice about the Sion at Switzerland, which was different to the London race, was that was in the little town, and that was on the streets, and either side of the track, which is just cornered off by barriers, were cafes, restaurants, and regular people. It wasn't like a ticketed event in Sion, so it was regular people coming into town on the race day. I mean, obviously there's days before that are heat days, but on race day itself on the Saturday, they were coming into the town to do what they probably normally did on a Saturday, and people are just chilling out drinking their coffee, and there's a bunch of riders riding past them in an e-scooter race, and it's very different, really. Think about it like that.
It's a cool way to do it, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, we do have some red and green questions. So do we have red and green items to hold up? Great stuff.
It's just, it doesn't like your green one, Rich.
Really? No.
Yeah. This new Zoom update does seem to be a bit fussy about what a face looks like.
So it likes an A2, but not a polo then. Oh well, never mind.
Yeah.
Okay, and I just want, just before we do red and green, is anyone just have a quick look and check we're actually still on YouTube?
Yeah, yes, I've got it running on the other computer.
Oh, you're so good, Alan. See, he's always one that's amazing.
Yeah, I need to get out now.
Fantastic. Right then, so we actually have some red and green questions. I need my glasses for this, I think, from our very own Cybrows, and I think Joe obviously might have thrown a couple in there as well. Let's just have a quick look now and just yep. So Simon,
you know she's serious with the glasses on, don't you?
I know, and I feel like a very school teacher now.
It's a very good look.
Okay, so Cybrows, our very own Zoomer, who can't be with us tonight. We miss you, Cy, and everybody else that can't be with us as well. So, question 1: have fuel companies passed the 5p reduction in fuel prices down to us at the pump?
Now that I have to drive to Scotland and back this weekend in my own car, which has an empty tank at the minute, then all the prices are shooting up again.
No, I tweeted earlier. So there's a garage near us that has unleaded for 192.9. It's 4p more expensive than diesel.
That's odd.
That's a
that's a
20
urine
pence
the other
extraction.
way. Yeah.
Okay, so this is the racing question. Will Sergio launch an F1 championship winning campaign? Oh,
Sergio who?
No idea.
Sergio Perez,
All right.
the other Red Bull driver, Max's teammate.
Well, I don't know.
I think he'll launch a title bid, but I don't think he'll win it.
Oh, I don't think he'll win it, but I think he'll go for it. Yeah. So should as many people as possible attend the Peugeot Festival at the Prescott Hill Climb on the 17th of July? I'm not sure if it means just everybody.
Chris is going to hunt us down and kill us if we don't do this.
Yeah. This is very, very important.
Yes, this is vital. Thou shalt go to Prescott, everyone.
A 5-passenger pickup truck could be seen as practical daily transport here in the UK. I kind of have to think. Well, yeah, I'm thinking more about the size and the fuel as well. So
I have opinions on this topic.
Go on.
Get your soapbox
I
out.
didn't necessarily. They're just pickup trucks are great, right? They're great if you've got lots of stuff to carry around, which you don't mind having outside. They're bleeding rotten cars. That's it. They're just rotten cars.
I think if you live in Canada, they're very practical and very good.
But no, because everything sits outside and gets wet and cold.
Where'd you put your groceries? I mean,
well, in the back.
That's what people are meant to. Well, in the back, in the tray.
Yeah, but then if you live in the US, they're more of a status symbol, and the size of your tires and the height of your suspension is a reflection of.
I don't need big off-roaders to give that kind of effect.
Yeah, I agree. It's all going that way though.
So a question thrown in then: do we actually like pickup trucks? Do we like them? Red or green?
Yes.
We like pickup trucks.
But they're not normal daily use.
Yes, but they're not good cars. That's my challenge.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think Alan's right.
Okay. Too many large screen displays in modern or current cars are distracting to drivers and are affecting driving standards.
I was fine. I was definitely green until the last part of that because I'm not convinced that the screens are the problem with driving standards.
Well, that's it. That's why I'm thinking that no, it's the drivers themselves, you know, because I've got screens in my car and I don't think I drive that bad.
I live in London. I don't see good driving standards anywhere.
I'm not sure if the lady who hit me last year was looking at the screen, but I saw CarPlay on her system, but that's not to say she was looking at it when she hit me, but no.
But it's saying, but the question's large screen displays. So I'm kind of thinking that the larger it is, the easier it is to drive. Because if you've got something tiny to look at and you're trying to look at your sat nav or something, it's like, oh, then you're taking a bit longer than if you had a bigger one. You can just glance that quickly.
Depends if the big one's just got more information on it. That's why CarPlay is quite good because it's simple. It's got big buttons and it can be used a bit more safely than some of these more complex systems.
So we like CarPlay. All right then. So converting a classic car to EV is always sacrilege.
No.
This is such a written just to cause debate. But we're all in agreement that it's not always sacrilege because we're grown-ups.
Tonight on things, we're all in agreement. We're not arguing tonight. It's good. Right. V8s sound better than V12s. Oh.
Guess who wrote this question?
Yeah.
I might need to own a V12 one day, maybe.
We're in the middle. Get a V10. Then there's no argument. Okay, you'd rather own a Testarossa over I don't know, pronounce this. Sorry, this is my non-driver thingy. A Countach or Countach.
Countach, I think is the best.
There are different pronunciations, to be fair.
There are many, yes. The
like
Lamborghini equivalent.
Oh, okay. So would you rather own a Testarossa or one of them?
Ferrari Testarossa or Lamborghini Countach.
You say green for Testarossa?
Yeah.
No. Yeah, green for Testarossa.
Green for Testarossa.
Okay, great. All right. That's fine.
Red for the correct answer.
The original Nissan Duke was a great looking car. I don't know what it looks like. Can anyone describe what it looks like and compare it to something?
It looks a bit like an alligator at the front. It was actually designed by the same design team as what I've got in my hand here, which is usually Vercross, as well. Rich knows because he brought me the model. So yeah. So, but it was. I could be very boring on this topic. Sorry, I'll shut up.
I'll just say yeah.
It's a bit weird looking. It's
got lights in funny places. And,
yeah, and you don't want to sit in the back if you've actually got a head. Especially not the CVT because the four-wheel drive CVT ones because the rear seat sits an inch or two higher, so you really are like.
Nerd fact of the day from Alan.
Yay!
What a surprise it was from me.
Okay, so influencers will replace traditional car journalists.
I'm not.
This is such a tricky one.
I'm a bit scared that I might be wrong. That's
so. I'm a bit like it's. I mean, it all. I mean, in some cases, it's already happening.
I mean, my glass is half empty, so
mine's half full, but it's the same. Yeah, it's a really tough one, Matt, because it depends what you mean by a traditional car journalist. I know one of my reviews has sold 2 cars, which is kind of freaky. Scares.
I think though that when you use the term influencer, you're probably referring to someone who doesn't really know much about a car, maybe. So at the moment, it's obviously a bit of a trend, isn't it, to take the word of someone very popular but that's if you're of a certain.
Yeah, but the trouble is, the trouble is, right, that some of these folk have very, very large followings. or very large numbers of followers, and that's great. But but how qualified are those followers? Are they made up of sort of Malaysian teenagers, or are they made up of people who are of an age and income and demographic who are actually going to go out and buy a new Mercedes and use it? So it's very tricky to quantify the sort of return per number that you get there as well. It's the whole thing is very hard. Whereas, some cranky old fart who writes for a local paper might not have big numbers, but people might trust what it says in the local paper, and they're just sitting there reading it. So it's all very, very difficult. And some manufacturers or groups of manufacturers are very much veering towards that. Hey, we'll go for these younger people with the big numbers, and not speaking to people who are traditional car journalists or even vaguely traditional car journalists, and basically say, no, we're not interested in you anymore. And the trouble is, there are some traditional car journalists who really have no influence anymore. So you can sort of see the point from that point of view. Ferret and Firkin Monthly is probably not, it might give some nice jollies for the chap who's been covering cars for them on the side for 20 years, but it might not be a good return. Sorry. And what I'm trying to say is a PR's job is very, very difficult.
There's probably room for everybody though at the minute, isn't there? There's room for each side.
The challenge at the minute, the challenge is right at the minute there isn't room for everyone, because manufacturers don't have cars to sell, and so there isn't the same onus on them to have a large press fleet, because they simply can't afford to have the cars aside for the press fleet, and there isn't the onus on them to actually have people going out and going, hey, you should buy this great new car, which you can't get for the next 9 months.
Joe, I know that this isn't sort of where the area that you work and specialize in, but do you know anything about this sort of?
Not from a professional perspective. No, not really. I do have some opinions on it, personal opinions that, I have. I think the influencer thing might be a bubble of some sort. And I think people might wake up at some point and realize, actually, this person who's telling me this car is great doesn't really know anything about cars, is being paid to tell me.
Yeah,
that's not going to work. It doesn't feel like it has sustainability to me.
The being paid to tell me thing, by the way, is really important.
But what do you think, Richard?
Well, I think mainstream stuff will always be there. Magazines like Autocar and those kind of things, because they've been around for so long. Sometimes I can see the point, but I don't do video, so that doesn't bother me too much. But I think the paying for opinions isn't a good practice to start or go down, I don't think.
Yeah, I kind of think that maybe there's an influencer market that people know that they're being paid for this kind of work, and that it's probably, if they're very popular, what's the supercar Blondie, that's kind of made that her career now, and has sort of developed and evolved over this herself, and she's become a knowledgeable influencer now. So I suppose there's scope for people to gain that experience and knowledge if they're an influencer and make a difference. But then there's also, that's for video content, but there's also the written content anyway. I don't think that will ever go away, the written content.
No, it's interesting. I was charging the car last week at near my folks, and the charger wasn't working. Long story, charger wasn't working, so we had to jump on a charger that this young guy had just plugged his works car into at MG5, and we had to wait for him to finish. And while we were waiting for him to finish, we were talking, and I said, I've got this for 3 months, and I write about it. And he was like, oh, were you a car journalist? I went, well, kind of. I said, but
that one.
I think hold on, I always say writer, not journalist, because I'm not a trained journalist. But anyway, he was like, oh, that must be really great, you know, really good having cars all the time. And I said, it's really not all that glamorous. People think it is, but it's just not. It's a lot of it is mundane stuff that everyone does. There are days when the car doesn't get driven. You know, there are hassles that everyone else has, but it's you must go overseas a lot. No, other people do, but I don't.
And it'd be good. We've not got Neil with us tonight. It would have been good to have had Neil's opinion on this.
No,
anyway.
we don't have Neil with us because Neil's overseas. Yeah,
we're massively digressing here. So we have to carry on. We have to get through these questions.
Can I just say one last thing? That influence is a really unfair term as well, much like millennial or any of these ones, because there's loads of people, there's loads of different skill sets, and some of them are fantastic, Nate, and put so much work into making sure they're right and doing it properly.
There was a Facebook group that I used to be a member of, but I'm not on Facebook anymore, that called them something else, not influencers, but I'm not going to here.
No, let's move on.
Let's move on. Okay. Okay, so tram systems, completely different topic here, should be introduced in all UK cities and suburbs to reduce both pollution and congestion.
I know. I think there's some strong opinions around here, so I'll be prepared to listen to some arguments. Alan?
Trams are really cool. Trolley buses are much better because they don't require the same amount of, I love trams. They don't require the same amount of just digging up the place. They don't have the same issues with weights and all that kind of stuff. Trams are awesome, great in city centres. Trolley buses are much better, but they're not as glamorous or as Euro cool. You see, that's why.
But it's sort of the question includes suburbs, and it's very difficult to get these kind of the overhead, all that stuff, because we know in major cities in the States that they have obviously those kind of vehicles, but they don't go out into the suburbs.
Other countries manage it. Somehow we can't in the UK. But I love this mass public transport system. Good mass public transport system. Fantastic thing.
Yeah.
So it's
okay. Top Gear. Should the seasons be longer like they used to be?
No, because I think you run the risk of spoiling the same idea or using the same idea several times over, which is what it was going like several years ago.
That was why they went to the shorter seasons, one of the reasons.
Yeah. Okay, so this is I'm going to ask them both. So BMW design peaked in the early 2000s, E46, E39, E38. Did they peak in the early 2000s? That's a question.
They peaked in the early no, they did.
Okay, so the sort of the second, it's not really second part, but it's BMW designers have lost their way with their latest work.
I was thinking that, and then I saw the pictures of the new hypercar. They're going to be racing at Le Mans. I thought, ooh.
My mind.
Yes.
So they've not lost their way. Interesting from Richard. Burnouts are cool. I feel like a child.
Maybe 30 years ago, but not now.
Never achieved a proper burnout.
So we're now talking about 7 minutes time. It's very political. I'm not even going to ask it. Okay, then that's fair enough. That was a burnouts argument. I can't, Joe. Do you want me to ask it, Joe?
It's up to you, LA. Up to you. It won't be me asking the question. It's not political. It's just a prediction of what might happen. I guess.
Okay, your prediction in still 7 minutes time. Boris will be voted out at 9 p.m. I'm not even getting involved in that. No way. Oh, that's fantastic. Well, let's see, shall we? Let's see what happens. Right. Well, unless anything has anything pressing or anything they would like to update us with, or any news, and if you do, just go like that really quickly. then we can sort of start to think about coming to a close, because we're almost at our hour. And no one's waving, so that's great. So Craig, we're going to come to you for our factoid.
Yeah. May is always a really good month for motorsport, because you have Monaco Grand Prix and the Indy 500 this month, June as well. You've got Le Mans coming up this weekend. I'm hoping to catch as much of it as possible, but I might be off out gallivanting and seeing people again, as I'm doing quite a lot at the moment, it seems. So it's good to have a bit of a social life back, seeing people such as yourself, LA, and hopefully see you three gentlemen somewhere at some point soon as well. That'd be great. But yeah, the last weekend gone, you had both the Monaco Grand Prix and the Indy 500, and I thought it was an interesting quirk that the winners of both races were running a bit of a tribute helmet to some of their fallen countrymen, if you will. So Sergio Perez was running a helmet in tribute, well, partially in tribute to Pedro Rodriguez, who previously was the most successful Mexican F1 driver of all time. But now Perez has taken that accolade himself, having won 3 Grand Prix to Rodriguez's 2. A nice sort of tribute helmet that he ran. And Marcus Ericsson, of all people, won the Indianapolis 500, former midfielder / backmarker in Formula One. He went over to IndyCar. People didn't really sort of think too much of him going over there. He's gradually worked his way up the ranks there, and then did a brilliant race over there to just keep himself in the mix for the first 175 laps, and then just blasted past everyone, which was quite surreal, because throughout the whole race, no one was able to really sort of get away and break and pull out a gap until Ericsson came along with 20 laps to go and just drove by the McLarens and his teammate Tony Kanaan, and just bye-bye. He survived a late red flag as well for his teammate Jimmy Johnson, yes, the NASCAR legend, crashing with 6 laps to go, and then survived the final restart, held off Pato O'Ward to come through and take a historic Indy 500 win. The second Swedish driver to do so after Kenny Brack, but he ran a helmet in tribute to Ronnie Peterson. So 2 tribute helmets, 2 of the biggest races on the calendar last weekend. So if you're running a tribute helmet at Le Mans this weekend, I would be quite optimistic about your chances. So, but yeah, I just thought it's a very interesting quirk, and I love a good tribute helmet as well.
Yeah, when they're well done, they're great.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really fantastic. Very, very interesting. Thank you so much for that, Craig. So if those at home that are watching have any questions for us, of course, you can find us on Twitter, the ZoomZoomers. And if you have any questions you would like us to ask, red and green questions, put them on our social media and we'll ask them at the next ZoomZoomers. We'll pick them up and ask them there. Of course, don't forget just to join us on social media and to chat to any of us if you're fascinated in cars or racing. Be good to meet you and chit chat. So thank you so much for tuning in, and if you also wouldn't mind liking and subscribing and sharing, of course, the usual stuff, and we'll keep coming to you and appearing and meeting together as the good friends that we have become. So thank you. And, I hope everyone's well, and it's good to see you all, and we shall see you all soon, shan't we? So we'll see you next time, basically. See you later. Thank you.
See you next time.
Cheers. See you.